Alex, we're moving on to our next topic today, and that is how to beat Argentina, Chile, and Peru. So do you want to take the first crack at Argentina? I just kind of touched on that, how this Canadian side lined up a little differently against a Trinidad and Tobago. You know what I mean? Like, it's very different of how they're going to approach Argentina. So from what you know about the defending Copa America champions and the defending World Cup champions, how is this 1% Canada side going to get anything out of this side? And if they do, how are they going to approach the game?
Yeah, it's going to be that's the $1 million question that you have to answer is how can you look competitive against Argentina? I guess what luxury is that maybe if you focus on Peru and Chile, the Argentina game will be a wash. You're expecting Argentina to finish top of the group with 9 points. But also it's a tournament opener. It sets so much of a tone. You get a draw on your tournament opener, it changes. Imagine how much different Canada's tournament would have been if they drew Belgium instead of lost, right? It would have been night and day, just even a point. So yeah, it's really the $1 million question. And the thing is, we haven't really seen many teams capable of doing it. But I think the thing I'm kind of starting to realize that maybe the answer is a lot different than we think. Because I think conventional wisdom is park the bus, you sit 11 players behind the ball, and you just pray and you bunker, you hit the other way. The thing is, there's one reason, and that's part of the reason why Argentina is so dangerous, is they have one man who is anti-low block, and it is Lionel Andres Messi. He is just, you give him a low block, he thrives, because that just means he gets to walk around in the final third, find a space. You give him a shot from 30 as he got against Mexico at the World Cup, he'll beat you. You give him a shot from the edge of the D like he did for Miami against Nashville in the League's Cup final, he'll punish you. You can't sit deep against Messi. You just can't, because either he'll break you down with some perfect pass like he did against Australia or against the Netherlands, or he'll break you down with a worldie. So I think for Canada, it's going to be that's going to be such an interesting matchup, because it feels like maybe the best way to go at it is actually a lot more aggressive. Yes, Argentina can also hurt you that way, and Di Maria is still lethal in transition despite his age. We're seeing him continue to rake in the goals. Lautaro Martinez is always a very dangerous threat in behind. Alejandro Garnacho is starting to embed himself into the mix. He's a dangerous wide threat. But as we saw at the World Cup, what I found fascinating is this game he pulled up here, Saudi Arabia, because they kind of bucked conventional wisdom and won. And if you watch the game, it made no sense. They were playing a high line. They weren't, always sitting deep. They were trying to play the offside trap. It kind of threw Argentina off, because all of a sudden you play a high line, you're asking Messi to build from a little deeper. You're not asking him to play in the final third as much. And maybe that's something where the secret to stopping Messi is, again, not stopping Messi. No one stops Messi, but it's maybe to move to keep Messi to certain areas of the pitch, because Messi can kill you from deep. He's a great passer. But if you focus maybe on cutting off his supply, like Saudi Arabia did with the offside trap, maybe that's the way to go. And all of a sudden, that could encourage guys like Bombito, because if you're going to play an offside trap, you need speed, and that's where somewhere like a Bombito could all of a sudden be an asset we're not talking about.
Now, as much as I want to keep talking about Argentina, Canada, because it's Messi, it's Davies, it's one of the biggest matchups you'll see. Actually, we got one more question coming on. Messi is full of injuries, and his way less fast than he was in PSG bar. So you need a good defense, and Messi will not pass through. I think the biggest question mark is around this Canadian defense, Alex, if you're looking at the roster in general. If you're looking at Argentina versus Canada, and you're wondering where the weakness would be, and if you're looking at either, creating goals, scoring goals, the midfield, the fullbacks, the center backs, I feel like most people would say the CBs. Do you think that's a fair point? And can they handle someone like Messi?
I'd say it's the CBs and it's also the midfield. I think you can make a double argument, and that's another thing where Canada's midfield is going to need to be on point. I think you should probably go 3, because Argentina sometimes plays a 4 in midfield with DePaul, McAllister, Enzo Fernandez, Messi kind of dropping in as a 10. The midfield as well is going to be just as important. But yeah, that defense is going to be massive, and I think for Canada especially, the right personnel is going to be very important, because as we saw against Trinidad, that's crucial. And yeah, I think the defense is definitely there to hone in on.
This is Copa America, baby. I want to see at least 3 yellow cards per game. Just bring McNaughton in and we win. Yeah, so we're gonna move on. Like I said, I like talking about Argentina against Canada because it's an exciting matchup. It's a huge opportunity for some of our players to play the defending world champions. It'll be great. But at the end of the day, I doubt this match will decide whether Canada goes through. It's the other two. And I brought up the Common Ball World Cup qualifying standings right now. Sitting up here in first, we have Argentina, 5-0-1. But it's down here where I want to focus on. And a lot of question marks were around why Canada is set up potentially for an upset to make it out of the group. And it's because of where Chile and Peru have been these past couple years. Peru didn't qualify for the last World Cup. Neither did Chile. Both of them are sitting towards the bottom of World Cup qualifying once again. Chile in 8, Peru in 10. And this is even having Ecuador with the points as a deduction like we talked about. This is the perfect opportunity for an upset. It's just like I said, at the same time, when you look at Canada and their performance at the World Cup, there's nothing really there to show that they can do it in a big tournament like this. And like I said, we don't have Herdman anymore, a big part of us qualifying, and we have Biello. So I think there's a lot of question marks really around all three nations. But you can't look at this fact. When I look at this roster, I'm like, out of those three teams, it's like Canada's got the starters. They got the David, the Davies, the Buchanan. They have players playing at a higher level than both Chile and Peru does. So take a stab at one first, Alex. Which one do you think, if you're going to pick them, if you're not going to pick Canada, which one do you think would get out of the group, Chile or Peru? And which one do you think is the biggest threat to Canada?
I'd probably say Chile is giving me a bit more confidence than Peru at the moment. I think Chile is a tournament team too. Like, we have to remember, it's a team that won Copa America back-to-back in 2015 and 2016. They seem to relish this tournament. They've got enough experience, so I think they'll be very frustrating to Canada. Peru is the one where I think this is a statement game for Canada. I think as well, Peru, their attack, just look at the numbers there. 1 goal, right? I mean, of course, Paraguay only has 1 goal, but their defense is good. They've only allowed 3. They're competitive in every game. Peru's got 1 and allowed 8. And I think really what was really telling is, because I was looking at Peru this window, they have nothing up front. And that's a huge concern for them in the country right now, that I've been seeing, is that pretty much their main 2 striking options this camp, right, were Gianluca Lapadula, 34, playing in Serie B, I think it is right now. Very good striker. I've liked watching him over the years. But he's 34. Feels like he's starting to push the edge of his prime. He's the starter. The backup this camp was a 40-year-old Paulo Guerrero, who's still getting called in. Like, I think if you're Canada, that's you're encouraged by that. And like, the thing is with Peru, there's who else? Because Raul Ruiz continues to be on the fringes of that team, but he's a guy who's also starting to push in his 30s. He's playing. He's not even always starting for the Seattle Sounders in MLS. Peru's attack is just the big worry. And I think if you're Canada, you're fine with that, because I think for Canada, you match up well against teams that are a little weaker in the attack, because Canada's attack can go up against anyone. We've seen it. They scored against a good Croatian defense. They scored against a good Moroccan defense. They've scored against the likes of the U.S., Mexico. They rarely get shut out anymore. This Canadian team can score goals. Davies, like you mentioned, Jonathan David, both of those guys would probably start for Peru and Chile. They would definitely start. So I think it's something where Peru's attack, that's encouraging if you're Canada, because at least you can know defensively it's not the same challenge of everyone we mentioned on Argentina. So I'm really targeting that Peru game as, yes, they're going to be very tough defensively. Yes, they seem to step up for Copa Americas. They made the final in 2019, I think it was, and they're going to be a tough out. But I think if you're Canada, you'd rather match up against a weaker offensive team. And right now, Peru, until proven otherwise, there's some very, very big question marks to have on their attack. Whereas this Chile team, they can score. They scored 2 against France this window in a friendly. Defensively, they were a bit sloppy in that game, but they also showed that they're going to be a team that will frustrate and has areas where they can hurt teams.
And both these countries have found success, and I say recently, but it's really not that recent, in the Copa America, as Chile, of course, won in 2015, and they won in 2016, which was hosted in the United States. Peru, like you mentioned, Alex, was the finalists in 2019 and had a good performance against Brazil, who ended up winning that tournament. But the 2015 tournament that Chile first won was 9 years ago, but they still have players from that team on today's team with Bravo and net. They have Vargas, they have Sanchez. They still have some talent as well. They're a team who knows how to get it done in this type of tournament. And considering that it is their tournament, this is their home tournament, both of them. You can't really rule against that when you have a Canadian side. But again, out of all the groups I would have wanted to get landed in, this is the one that gives me the most hope, just considering where both of those nations are right now. Argentina is obviously going to be difficult. I thought this was a very curious take, and I want to get your thoughts on it, Alex. No point to waste energy on against Argentina. Send a B team on and then be fresh for the final 2 matches against Peru and Chile. Any chance we see that? Because again, this is the
team against Argentina.
It's the defending.
Like when are you going to play Argentina in the opening game of a Copa America competitive match? You play your best team. Like there's so much value that in a Eustáquio going up against a Messi, Kone going up against a Messi. Like there's so much value. And I think you play your A team and you give it your best shot and you go from there, right? I think it's. And again, if you get a point in that first game, the first game really changes so much. And it's something where if you wanted to pick, I'd want the weakest opponent in the first game. So you get those 3 points. It's nicer to head into that third game knowing you can play for a draw to get through, play for a certain result. Whereas if you lose that first game, the likely outcome is you head into that third game needing a win. And that just is a psychological hurdle that can always be tough to overcome.
I'm just going to touch on this question very, very quickly. This is the Copa America. I agree. Like I said, I as a biased Canadian, I'm not like I think Canada's gonna have a very difficult time getting out of the group. Just at the end of the day, we're going to talk about hope. We're going to talk about how they're going to do it. I think Canada is, despite having, I think they have a better team. And like you're saying, Canada only has Davies. No, they don't. They have players that are playing at multiple players that are playing at a top level. You have someone playing at, you have Buchanan playing at Inter. You have Davies at Bayern. You have David at Lille. You have so much form spread across Europe, which I can't really say at that level that Peru or Chile do. So I get your point, but again, this is their tournament, and I think that's why it's hard for me to say, yeah, I'm super confident Canada's going through.
Well, I mean, to answer this question as well, again, I think that on paper is important to mention. We're only dissecting these matches on paper. We're only dissecting what we know about Davies. David, they would start for Peru and Chile on paper. I don't know if is that unfair to say? I'd back that claim. Those are the sorts of things you can look at on paper. What's also you can't consider, and what we also kind of briefly touched on, you don't know how Peru's going to act. Because yes, okay, maybe they're struggling, but for them, maybe they realize that if they have a strong Copa, they can turn around their World Cup qualifiers and make the World Cup. What we don't know is for Chile, maybe they view this as a last dance for some of those older guys. Okay, we can go in, and those are the lessons that Canada's going to need to learn. That's what they learned at the World Cup. Because on paper, they had a chance of at least being competitive at the World Cup, and they were. They went up. They went toe-to-toe with Belgium, Croatia, and Morocco, and they came up short. That's where they learned. Okay, yeah, they had some talent in some areas, but defensively they made a lot of mistakes. Against Belgium, they didn't take their chances. You know how the story goes. We're not going to rehash that. So I think what's going to be so tough to judge with this Canadian team is what these matches are actually going to look like. I think, again, on paper, if it's not unfair to say, look, the ELO ratings literally suggest it. You can take the ELO ratings with a grain of salt. You can make odds, numbers that don't tell you. The numbers say that based on the form over the last 2 years, and ELO ratings takes into account the level of other teams you're playing. It takes into account home or away. It thinks that Canada, Peru, and Chile are ranked pretty much evenly by the numbers. Is that true? We find out in this Copa America. That's where we're going to find out all the intangibles. So I think that's very important to remember in this discussion, that yes, we're going to approach it from that, what we know on paper, because we don't know what Canada versus Peru is going to look like. We just haven't seen that match. We don't know what an experienced Peru team was going to do to Canada. And I think that's, I don't think it's confident to look at, to make some of the states we're saying when remembering that.
Yeah. And he's, the comment said that Davies is the only one we have. We have, Eustáquio, Johnston, Laren, David, Buchanan. We have a ton of talent, just whether you can get it on the pitch, working in the right way against whatever opponent you're going up against. Like I said, that Trinidad and Tobago match was hard to watch, and the amount of talent we have on the Canadian side doesn't mean it's always going to get the job done. I'm very curious, and I think Peru and Chile will be a perfect opportunity to show where this national team is at, whether it's Biello, the one who's going to lead them, or someone else. But this is going to be very exciting, and if you are a Canadian fan, you should be excited. Like, you should be more excited than I'm feeling right now, because at the end of the day, they could have a good realistic opportunity getting out considering where the other two programs are. But it also wouldn't surprise me if Canada finished in the basement of this group. This is their first time ever at a Copa America. I know they have a ton of talent, but they've never been in the situation before, so we'll have to see the way that they handle it. So, Alex, very quickly before we move on to the coaching debate, which I know will be a fun one here on stream, a simple kind of question. What does success look like to you at this Copa America? Do you have, wanting to get out of the group, good showing in the tournament? What do you think our odds are of making it out of the group stage? I guess I'll begin quickly. I'll let you think about it. For me, considering how well Canada did leading up to the 2022 World Cup, where we were one of the most informed nations heading into that tournament, I think we got very unlucky with the group we were placed in. Like a great example is I was looking at the United States. I would have took their group in a heartbeat. We had two nations that went to the semifinals, and the other one was Belgium. I thought there were some really good moments in it, but it just showed the gap in the level when you're playing on the world's biggest stage. And Canada had a muffin. 0 wins, 0 draw, 3 losses. We bounced out and had a really difficult 2023 to follow that. So that's why I said without, I don't think a head coach who's in right now who's going to be there for the long term. I don't know if BL has what it takes to compete at a tournament like this. But I do think there's a lot of talent in this side. And who knows, big players, they like to show up on big occasions. And this is the first Copa America. Who knows what kind of performance we're going to get out of those players we touched on, like a Davies, David Buchanan. I would like to just see them show that they deserve to be here. I would like to see a good competitive matchup against Argentina, a 1-2 goal kind of game, create some chances, show that they can play with the best of them. I'm not expecting them to get anything from that result, but I want to see them start their A team and show that they're in it. And then I want to see them get something from one of these other results. I don't want to see us go pointless. I'd ideally like to see a win. Even if we went 1-0-2, that'd be great. Or picked up a couple draws. I want to show that we can compete against the likes of a Peru and Chile in their own tournament and show that we deserve to be here. I think if we make it to the knockouts and make it to the round of 16, that is icing on the cake. That would exceed my expectations just because I'm so hit or miss because I think we have a good enough squad. I just don't know if we're in the right moment to do something in this tournament. So for me, it's just competing and hopefully getting some type of results. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I think to kind of continue that idea of the results, I just want to see, Canada bring 110%, bring some consistency. I think that's also something that's kind of been lost over the last year with Canada is that they haven't been as consistent as they can be. And I think that's what's so interesting with this discussion to kind of continue talking about Chile and Peru. What's funny about Chile and Peru is that on paper, we have no idea what this team's going to look like. Peru looks old. Chile looks a little older. What are they going to look like? What do I know about Peru and Chile? They're going to bring 110%. And that's sometimes the difference between CONMEBOL qualifying that I notice when I watch a lot of it is that no matter what moment any of these teams in, even if I'm watching Bolivia, Brazil, these teams always give 110, 115%. And that's what's so special about them, that even if one of the teams is in a bit of a low era versus a team in the golden era, they're always bringing their absolute best to a tournament. I think for Canada and CONCACAF, we've kind of seen that slip because against TNT, could you say that was their 110% performance? It's maybe a 60% performance? You get away with it in CONCACAF. You can't. You don't need to be 110% in a game like that and win. And I think that's going to be the challenge for all the CONCACAF teams too. For US, Mexico, was the US 110% against Jamaica? No, that felt like a 40-50% performance. And we've seen that from Mexico. I think that's going to be the one thing I want to see from Canada. I want to see them be consistent across all 3 games. Just bring that mentality, because I think that's, again, where really the difference is between CONMEBOL and CONCACAF is the mentality of these teams, that they just have this desire, this will to win at all costs. And for teams in CONCACAF, they sometimes they don't always have that. So if I want to see that, I would love to see Canada win a game. I think that would be huge to win a game at a major tournament. I think it would really be a big confidence booster because at the end of the day, these are 3 good teams. So if you're winning any one of those 3, I think you could be really pleased. And I want to see this Canadian team bring an identity. I think that it feels like for a while, this Canadian team, if I was going to ask you, Josh, what would you say this Canadian team's identity is? Like, we know what they're good at on paper, but what's their identity? Are they going to be a team that presses you high up the pitch? Are they going to be a team that's organized in the middle? Are they going to be a team that defends first? Are they going to be a team that wants to play with more possession?
It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell what their identity is. So I'd say also bring an identity to this sort of tournament and build from it. I think this would be a good time to to find that. And so yeah, those are the big things. I think on paper, this Canadian team should absolutely be competitive. I think in an ideal world where they're at their 110%, like I mentioned, we're heading into this tournament like, I'm not saying they're confident of qualifying, but it would be like, yes, they have a very good chance. Right now, I think we're saying they're kind of at that lower chance, just because we genuinely don't know what version of Canada we're going to see. So I'd love to see them bring an identity, bring that effort, because if they bring those sorts of things, talent will take them places. Now they just feels like they need those intangibles, chemistry, all those sorts of things that they're still building. It feels like right